The Secret Teachings of All Ages by ManlyPHall. Part 15, The Hiramic Legend, Music and Color. Enjoy the listening. Like the sapphire Shethia, the lapis exilis, crown jewel of the archangel Lucifer, fell from heaven. Michael, archangel of the sun and the hidden god of Israel, at the head of the angelic hosts swooped down upon Lucifer and his legions of rebellious spirits. During the conflict, Michael with his flaming sword struck the flashing lapis exilis from the coronet of his adversary, and the green stone fell through all the celestial rings into the dark and immeasurable abyss. Out of Lucifer's radiant gem was fashioned the sangreal, or Holy Grail, from which Christ is said to have drunk at the Last Supper. Though some controversy exists as to whether the Grail was a cup or a platter, it is generally depicted in art as a chalice of considerable size and unusual beauty. According to the legend, Joseph of Arimathea brought the Grail cup to the place of the crucifixion, and in it caught the blood pouring from the wounds of the dying Nazarene. Later Joseph, who had become custodian of the sacred relics, the sangreal and the spear of Longinus, carried them into a distant country. According to one version, his descendants finally placed these relics in Glastonbury Abbey in England. According to another, in a wonderful castle on Mount Salvat, Spain, built by angels in a single night. Under the name of Preston John, Parsifal, the last of the Grail kings, carried the holy cup with him into India, and it disappeared forever from the Western world. Subsequent search for the sangreal was the motif for much of the knight-errantry of the Arthurian legends and the ceremonials of the Round Table. No adequate interpretation has ever been given to the Grail mysteries. Some believe the Knights of the Holy Grail to have been a powerful organization of Christian mystics, perpetuating the ancient wisdom under the rituals and sacraments of the oracular cup. The quest for the Holy Grail is the eternal search for truth, and Albert G. Mackey sees in it a variation of the Masonic legend of the lost word so long sought by the brethren of the craft. There is also evidence to support the claim that the story of the Grail is an elaboration of an early pagan nature myth, which has been preserved by reason of the subtle manner in which it was engrafted upon the cult of Christianity. From this particular viewpoint, the Holy Grail is undoubtedly a type of the ark or vessel in which the life of the world is preserved, and therefore is significant of the body of the Great Mother, nature. Its green color relates it to Venus and to the mystery of generation. Also to the Islamic faith, whose sacred color is green and whose Sabbath is Friday, the day of Venus. The Holy Grail is a symbol both of the lower, or irrational, world and of the bodily nature of man, because both are receptacles for the living essences of the superior worlds. Such is the mystery of the redeeming blood which, descending into the condition of death, overcomes the last enemy by ensouling all substance with its own immortality. To the Christian, whose mystic faith especially emphasizes the love element, the Holy Grail typifies the heart in which continually swirls the living water of eternal life. Moreover, to the Christian, the search for the Holy Grail is the search for the real self which, when found, is the consummation of the magnum opus. The Holy Cup can be discovered only by those who have raised themselves above the limitations of sensuous existence. In his mystic poem, The Vision of Sir Launfal, James Russell Lowell discloses the true nature of the Holy Grail by showing that it is visible only to a certain state of spiritual consciousness. Only upon returning from the vain pursuit of haughty ambition did the aged and broken knight see in the transformed lepers cup the glowing chalice of his lifelong dream. Some writers trace a similarity between the Grail legend and the stories of the martyred sun gods whose blood, descending from heaven into the earth, was caught in the cup of matter and liberated therefrom by the initiatory rites. The Holy Grail may also be the seed pod so frequently employed in the ancient mysteries as an emblem of germination and resurrection. And if the cup-like shape of the Grail be derived from the flower, it signifies the regeneration and spiritualization of the generative forces in man. There are many accounts of stone images which, because of the substances entering into their composition and the ceremonials attendant upon their construction, were ensouled by the divinities whom they were created to resemble. To such images were ascribed various human faculties and powers, such as speech, thought, and even motion. While renegade priests doubtless resorted to trickery, an instance of which is related in a curious apocryphal fragment entitled Bell, and the dragon and supposedly deleted from the end of the Book of Daniel, many of the phenomena recorded in connection with sanctified statues and relics can hardly be explained unless the work of supernatural agencies be admitted. History records the existence of stones, which, when struck, threw all who heard the sound into a state of ecstasy. There were also echoing images, which whispered for hours after the room itself had become silent, and musical stones productive of the sweetest harmonies. In recognition of the sanctity which the Greeks and Latins ascribed to stones, they placed their hands upon certain consecrated pillars when taking an oath. In ancient times, stones played a part in determining the fate of accused persons, for it was customary for juries to reach their verdicts by dropping pebbles into a bag. Divination by stones was often resorted to by the Greeks, and Helena is said to have foretold by lithomancy the destruction of Troy. Many popular superstitions about stones survive the so-called Dark Ages. Chief among these is the one concerning the famous black stone in the seat of the coronation chair in Westminster Abbey, which is declared to be the actual rock used by Jacob as a pillow. The black stone also appears several times in religious symbolism. It was called Heliogabalus, a word presumably derived from Elagabal, the Syrophoenician sun god. This stone was sacred to the sun and declared to possess great and diversified properties. The black stone in the Kaaba at Mecca is still revered throughout the Mohammedan world. It is said to have been white originally and of such brilliancy that it could be seen many days' journey from Mecca, but as ages passed, it became blackened by the tears of pilgrims and the sins of the world. According to the teachings of the mysteries, the rays of the celestial bodies, striking the crystallizing influences of the lower world, become the various elements. Partaking of the astral virtues of their source, these elements neutralize certain unbalanced forms of celestial activity and, when properly combined, contribute much to the well-being of man. Little is known today concerning these magical properties, but the modern world may yet find it profitable to consider the findings of the early philosophers who determined these relationships by extensive experimentation. Out of such research arose the practice of identifying the metals with the bones of the various deities. For example, the Egyptians, according to Manetho, considered iron to be the bone of Mars and the lodestone the bone of Horus. By analogy, lead would be the physical skeleton of Saturn, copper of Venus, quicksilver of Mercury, gold of the Sun, silver of the Moon, and antimony of the Earth. It is possible that uranium will prove to be the metal of Uranus and radium to be the metal of Neptune. The four ages of the Greek mystics, the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age, are metaphoric expressions referring to the four major periods in the life of all things. In the divisions of the day, they signify dawn, midday, sunset, and midnight. In the duration of gods, men, and universes, they denote the periods of birth, growth, maturity, and decay. The Greek ages also bear a close correspondence to the four yugas of the Hindus: Krita Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dvapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. Their method of calculation is described by Ulamuddin as follows. In each of the 12 signs, there are 1800 minutes. Multiply this number by 12, you have 21,600. Multiply this 21,600 by 80, and it will give 1,728,000, which is the duration of the first age, called Krita Yuga. If the same number be multiplied by 60, it will give 1,296,000, the years of the second age, Treta Yuga. The same number multiplied by 40 gives 864,000, the length of the third age, Dvapara Yuga. The same multiplied by 20 gives 432,000, the fourth age, Kali Yuga. It will be noted that these multipliers decrease in inverse ratio to the Pythagorean tetracties. 1, 2, 3, and 4. H.P. Blavatsky declares that Orpheus taught his followers how to affect a whole audience by means of a lodestone, and that Pythagoras paid particular attention to the color and nature of precious stones. She adds, "The Buddhists assert that the sapphire produces peace of mind, equanimity, and chases all evil thoughts by establishing a healthy circulation in man. So does an electric battery with its well-directed fluid, say our electricians. The sapphire, say the Buddhists, will open barred doors and dwellings for the spirit of man. It produces a desire for prayer and brings with it more peace than any other gem, but he who would wear it must lead a pure and holy life. Mythology abounds with accounts of magical rings and talismanic jewels. In the second book of his Republic, Plato describes a ring which, when the collet was turned inward, rendered its wearer invisible. With this Gyges, the shepherd, secured for himself the throne of Lydia. Josephus also describes magical rings designed by Moses and King Solomon, and Aristotle mentions one which brought love and honor to its possessor. In his chapter dealing with the subject, Henry Cornelius Agrippa not only mentions the same rings, but states, upon the authority of Philostratus Jarchus, that Apollonius of Tyana extended his life to over 20 years with the aid of 7 magical rings presented to him by an East Indian prince. Each of these 7 rings was set with a gem partaking of the nature of one of the 7 ruling planets of the week, and by daily changing the rings Apollonius protected himself against sickness and death by the intervention of the planetary influences. The philosopher also instructed his disciples in the virtues of these talismanic jewels, considering such information to be indispensable to the theurgist. Agrippa describes the preparation of magical rings as follows. When any star planet ascends fortunately, with the fortunate aspect or conjunction of the moon, we must take a stone and herb that is under that star, and make a ring of the metal that is suitable to this star. And in it fasten the stone, putting the herb or root under it, not omitting the inscriptions of images, names, and characters, as also the proper suffumigations. The ring has long been regarded as the symbol of attainment, perfection, and immortality. The last because the circlet of precious metal had neither beginning nor end. In the mysteries, rings chased to resemble a serpent with its tail in its mouth were worn by the initiates as material evidence of the position reached by them in the order. Signet rings, engraved with certain secret emblems, were worn by the Hierophants, and it was not uncommon for a messenger to prove that he was the official representative of a prince or other dignitary by bringing with his message either an impression from his master's ring or the signet itself. The wedding ring originally was intended to imply that in the nature of the one who wore it the state of equilibrium and completion had been attained. This plain band of gold therefore bore witness of the union of the higher self, God, with the lower self, nature, and the ceremony consummating this indissoluble blending of divinity and humanity in the one nature of the initiated mystic constituted the Hermetic marriage of the mysteries. In describing the regalia of a magician, Eliphaz Levi declares that on Sunday, the day of the sun, he should carry in his right hand a golden wand, set with a ruby or chrysolite. On Monday, the day of the moon, he should wear a collar of 3 strands consisting of pearls, crystals, and selenites. On Tuesday, the day of Mars, he should carry a wand of magnetized steel and a ring of the same metal set with an amethyst. On Wednesday, the day of Mercury, he should wear a necklace of pearls or glass beads containing mercury and a ring set with an agate. On Thursday, the day of Jupiter, he should carry a wand of glass or resin and wear a ring set with an emerald or a sapphire. On Friday, the day of Venus, he should carry a wand of polished copper and wear a ring set with a turquoise and a crown or diadem decorated with lapis lazuli and beryl. And on Saturday, the day of Saturn, he should carry a wand ornamented with onyx stone and wear a ring set with onyx and a chain about the neck formed of lead. Paracelsus, Agrippa, Kircher, Lilly, and numerous other magicians and astrologers have tabulated the gems and stones corresponding to the various planets and zodiacal signs. The following list has been compiled from their writings. To the sun is assigned the carbuncle, ruby, garnet, especially the pyrope and other fiery stones, sometimes the diamond. To the moon, the pearl, selenite, and other forms of crystal. To Saturn, the onyx, jasper, topaz, and sometimes the lapis lazuli. To Jupiter, the sapphire, emerald, and marble. To Mars, the amethyst, hyacinth, lodestone, sometimes the diamond. To Venus, the turquoise, beryl, emerald, and sometimes the pearl, alabaster, coral, and carnelian. To Mercury, the chrysolite, agate, and variegated marble. To the zodiac, the same authorities assign the following gems and stones. To Aries, the sardonyx, bloodstone, amethyst, and diamond. To Taurus, the carnelian, turquoise, hyacinth, sapphire, moss agate, and emerald. To Gemini, the topaz, agate, chrysoprase, crystal, and aquamarine. To Cancer, the topaz, chalcedony, black onyx, moonstone, pearl, cat's eye, crystal, and sometimes the emerald. To Leo, the jasper, sardonyx, beryl, ruby, chrysolite, amber, tourmaline, sometimes the diamond. To Virgo, the emerald, carnelian, jade, chrysolite, and sometimes the pink jasper and hyacinth. To Libra the beryl, sardius, coral, lapis lazuli, opal, and sometimes the diamond. To Scorpio the amethyst, beryl, sardonyx, aquamarine, carbuncle, lodestone, topaz, and malachite. To Sagittarius the hyacinth, topaz, chrysolite, emerald, carbuncle, and turquoise. To Capricorn the chrysoprase, ruby, malachite, black onyx, white onyx, jet, and moonstone. To Aquarius the crystal, sapphire, garnet, zircon, and opal. To Pisces the sapphire, jasper, chrysolite, moonstone, and amethyst. Both the magic mirror and the crystal ball are symbols little understood. Woe to that benighted mortal who accepts literally the stories circulated concerning them. He will discover, often at the cost of sanity and health, that sorcery and philosophy, while often confused, have nothing in common. The Persian magi carried mirrors as an emblem of the material sphere which reflects divinity from its every part. The crystal ball, long misused as a medium for the cultivation of psychical powers, is a threefold symbol. It signifies the crystalline universal egg in whose transparent depths creation exists. It is a proper figure of deity previous to its immersion in matter. It signifies the ethereal sphere of the world in whose translucent essences is impressed and preserved the perfect image of all terrestrial activity. Meteors, or rocks from heaven, were considered tokens of divine favor and enshrined as evidence of a pact between the gods and the community in which they fell. Curiously marked or chipped natural stones are occasionally found. In China, there is a slab of marble the grain of which forms a perfect likeness of the Chinese dragon. The Oberammergau stone, chipped by nature into a close resemblance to the popular conception of the face of Christ, is so remarkable that even the crowned heads of Europe requested the privilege of beholding it. Stones of such nature were held in the highest esteem among primitive peoples, and even today exert a wide influence upon the religiously minded. Ceremonial magic is the ancient art of invoking and controlling spirits by a scientific application of certain formulae. A magician, enveloped in sanctified vestments and carrying a wand inscribed with hieroglyphic figures, could by the power vested in certain words and symbols control the invisible inhabitants of the elements and of the astral world. While the elaborate ceremonial magic of antiquity was not necessarily evil, there arose from its perversion several false schools of sorcery, or black magic. Egypt, a great center of learning and the birthplace of many arts and sciences, furnished an ideal environment for transcendental experimentation. Here, the black magicians of Atlantis continued to exercise their superhuman powers until they had completely undermined and corrupted the morals of the primitive mysteries. By establishing a sacerdotal caste, they usurped the position formerly occupied by the initiates and seized the reins of spiritual government. Thus, black magic dictated the state religion and paralyzed the intellectual and spiritual activities of the individual by demanding his complete and unhesitating acquiescence in the dogma formulated by the priestcraft. The pharaoh became a puppet in the hands of the Scarlet Council, a committee of arch-sorcerers elevated to power by the priesthood. These sorcerers then began the systematic destruction of all keys to the ancient wisdom, so that none might have access to the knowledge necessary to reach adeptship without first becoming one of their order. They mutilated the rituals of the mysteries while professing to preserve them, so that even though the neophyte passed through the degrees, he could not secure the knowledge to which he was entitled. Idolatry was introduced by encouraging the worship of the images, which in the beginning the wise had erected solely as symbols for study and meditation. False interpretations were given to the emblems and figures of the mysteries, and elaborate theologies were created to confuse the minds of their devotees. The masses, deprived of their birthright of understanding and groveling in ignorance, eventually became the abject slaves of the spiritual impostors. Superstition universally prevailed, and the black magicians completely dominated national affairs, with the result that humanity still suffers from the sophistries of the priestcrafts of Atlantis and Egypt. Fully convinced that their scriptures sanctioned it, numerous medieval Qabbalists devoted their lives to the practice of ceremonial magic. The transcendentalism of the Qabbalists is founded upon the ancient and magical formula of King Solomon, who has long been considered by the Jews as the prince of ceremonial magicians. Among the Qabbalists of the Middle Ages were a great number of black magicians who strayed from the noble concepts of the Sefer Yetzirah and became enmeshed in demonism and witchcraft. They sought to substitute magic mirrors, consecrated daggers, and circles spread around posts of coffin nails. For the living of that virtuous life, which, without the assistance of complicated rituals or submundane creatures, unfailingly brings man to the state of true individual completion. Those who sought to control elemental spirits through ceremonial magic did so largely with the hope of securing from the invisible worlds either rare knowledge or supernatural power. The little red demon of Napoleon Bonaparte and the infamous oracular heads of de Medici are examples of the disastrous results of permitting elemental beings to dictate the course of human procedure. While the learned and godlike demon of Socrates seems to have been an exception, this really proves that the intellectual and moral status of the magician has much to do with the type of elemental he is capable of invoking. But even the demon of Socrates deserted the philosopher when the sentence of death was passed. Transcendentalism and all forms of phenomenalistic magic are but blind alleys, outgrowths of Atlantean sorcery. And those who forsake the straight path of philosophy to wander therein almost invariably fall victims to their imprudence. Man, incapable of controlling his own appetites, is not equal to the task of governing the fiery and tempestuous elemental spirits. Many a magician has lost his life as the result of opening a way whereby submundane creatures could become active participants in his affairs. When Eliphaz Levi invoked the spirit of Apollonius of Tyana, what did he hope to accomplish? Is the gratification of curiosity a motive sufficient to warrant the devotion of an entire lifetime to a dangerous and unprofitable pursuit? If the living Apollonius refused to divulge his secrets to the profane, is there any probability that after death he would disclose them to the curious-minded? Levi himself did not dare to assert that the specter which appeared to him was actually the great philosopher, for Levi realized only too well the proclivity of elementals to impersonate those who have passed on. The majority of modern mediumistic apparitions are but elemental creatures masquerading through bodies composed of thought substance, supplied by the very persons desiring to behold these wraiths of discarnate beings.